The WWE Hall of Fame is supposed to honor wrestling's greatest legends. But some of the most incredible superstars who defined entire eras are still waiting outside. Bam Bigelow, the beast from the East, whose agility defied every expectation of what a 400-pound man could do. Rick Martel, the model who combined technical excellence with magnetic charisma for over 2 decades. Kong Bundy, the walking earthquake whose mere presence could silence an entire arena. These titans of the squared circle redefined what it meant to be a professional wrestler, yet politics, legal disputes, and corporate grudges have kept them from receiving the recognition they've rightfully earned. First up, Rick Martel. Rick Martel is one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. He went from being a respected world champion to becoming the model, a gimmick that turned him into a pop culture phenomenon, strutting down to the ring in designer suits and blinding opponents with his perfume spray. However, in 1998, a devastating hip toss gone wrong would force this legend into early retirement. And 25 years after that day, Rick Martel is still not in the Hall of Fame. In 1956, Richard Vignol was born in Quebec City, Canada. At an age when most kids were still worried about their school homework, young Rick was already learning the fundamentals of professional wrestling. For him, wrestling wasn't just a sport, it was the family business. Growing up watching his brother Michel Martel tear up the territories, Rick had wrestling in his blood from day one. Those early years spent studying amateur wrestling would serve him well, building a foundation that would make him one of the most technically sound performers of his era. The story of Rick's professional debut reads like something out of a movie. When another wrestler went down with an injury, his brother didn't hesitate. He knew exactly who to call. Yes, at just 16 years old, Rick Martel stepped through the ropes for the first time, filling in for that injured worker. Wrestling historians would later note the irony here, as Michel Martel, already making waves in Stampede Wrestling as part of the Mercenaries, had no idea he was helping launch one of wrestling's most enduring careers. But what set Rick apart in those early years wasn't just his natural ability, it was his willingness to travel anywhere and everywhere to perfect his craft. Just like future stars William Regal and Chris Jericho would do years later, young Rick Martel understood that to become truly great, you had to learn different styles from all around the world. Before he ever set foot in a WWF ring, Rick had already built up a resume that would make most veterans jealous. From capturing gold in Stu Hart's legendary Stampede Wrestling territory to winning championships in NWA All-Star Wrestling out in Vancouver, Martel was proving himself everywhere he went. Yes, while many wrestlers struggled to adapt to different styles, Rick seemed to thrive on the challenge, adding titles in Japan, Puerto Rico, and even New Zealand to his growing collection. By the mid-1970s, Rick Martel knew that to reach the next level in professional wrestling, he needed to break into the American market. But for a young French-Canadian wrestler, the path south wasn't as simple as just crossing the border. 2 major hurdles stood between Rick and his American dreams: getting a work visa and mastering the English language that would be crucial for connecting with US audiences. Looking back on those early days, Martel would often reflect on how his time in Calgary's Stampede Wrestling territory opened an unexpected door. His matches for Stu Hart led to a fateful meeting with Kevin Sullivan, a connection that would prove more valuable than anyone could have guessed at the time. The wrestling scene back then was all about connections, and word had spread that Sullivan could help talented workers break into the Florida market. But even with Sullivan's help, the visa process in 1975 proved to be a challenge that tested Rick's patience. Perhaps even more daunting, though, was the language barrier he faced once he got there. When legendary announcer Gordon Solie would try to interview the young Canadian star, Martel could barely string together more than basic responses, a far cry from the polished performer he would later become. But just as Rick's career seemed poised to reach new heights, tragedy struck in a way that would change his life forever. Michel Martel, Rick's beloved brother and the man who'd given him his start in the business, collapsed after a match in Puerto Rico. When the news reached Rick that his brother had passed away, it shook him to his very core. He hadn't just lost a brother. He'd lost his mentor, his guide, and his strongest connection to the wrestling business. While many wrestlers face setbacks and struggles on their way to the top, few had to deal with such a profound personal loss right as their career was taking off. The death of Michel Martel didn't just rob the wrestling world of a talented performer. It forced young Rick to navigate the cutthroat world of professional wrestling without his most trusted advisor. In 1980, still carrying the weight of his brother's loss, Rick Martel finally achieved his dream of breaking into the World Wrestling Federation. His natural good looks and exceptional technical ability quickly caught the eye of those in power. Yes, while he started his WWF run working singles matches, it was when he paired up with Tony Garea that things really took off. The duo proved to be an instant success, defeating the Wild Samoans to capture the WWF Tag Team Championships before the year was out. The next year would see Martel and Garea trading the prestigious belts back and forth with the Wild Samoans in a series of memorable matches that had fans on the edge of their seats. But their luck would run out when the crafty combination of Mr. Fuji and Mr. Sato managed to wrestle the titles away from them. Despite giving it everything they had in the rematches that followed, Martel and Garea couldn't recapture their championship glory. By 1982, Martel was ready for a change of scenery, and the American Wrestling Association seemed like the perfect place to reinvent himself. The AWA, under the watchful eye of Vern Gunn, had a reputation for showcasing technical wrestling, something that played right into Martel's strengths. While some wrestlers might have struggled to adapt to the AWA's more traditional style, Rick seemed to thrive in this new environment. Those early years in the AWA saw Martel steadily climbing the ranks, putting on wrestling clinics night after night that had both fans and fellow wrestlers taking notice. All that hard work would finally pay off in May 1984, when Rick achieved what many thought impossible, defeating the seemingly unstoppable Nick Bockwinkel to capture the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. This wasn't just any title victory. This was Rick Martel proving he could hang with the very best in the business. But winning the belt was only half the battle. For the next 19 months, Martel would prove himself a fighting champion, taking on all-comers in a series of matches that would cement his legacy as one of the greatest technical wrestlers of his era. From veterans like Bob Backlund to rising stars like Michael Hayes, from the technically sound Larry Zbyszko to the flamboyant Jimmy Garvin, Rick Martel met every challenge head-on, proving that his championship reign was no fluke. While his brother Michel Martel might not have been there to see it, Rick was living up to everything the Martel name stood for in professional wrestling. In October 1985, wrestling fans in Tokyo witnessed something special, a dream match between two of the industry's most respected champions. When AWA World Champion Rick Martel stepped into the ring with NWA World Champion Ric Flair, the buzz in the arena was electric. For 35 grueling minutes, these two masters of their craft put on a wrestling clinic that ended in a double countout, leaving fans hungry for more. The match, held as part of an all-Japan show, would later be remembered as one of the finest examples of pure wrestling from that era. But all championship reigns must come to an end, and in December 1985, the mighty Stan Hansen finally managed to dethrone Martel. Rather than stick around for an immediate rematch, Rick decided it was time for yet another adventure. While most wrestlers might have been content to stay in the comfort of American wrestling, Martel took his talents to international wrestling, or Lutte Internationale as it was known in his native Quebec, proving once again that he could succeed anywhere in the world. When Rick Martel returned to the WWF on October 20th, 1986, he came back with a new partner and a new attitude. Teaming with the promising young Tom Zenk, they formed a duo known as the Can-Am Connection. The chemistry between the veteran Martel and the rookie Zenk was evident from their first matches together on WWF television that fall. Yes, even before they could really get rolling in the WWF, the pair was off to Japan, representing the company in All Japan Pro Wrestling's prestigious Real World Tag League. January 1987 saw the Can-Am Connection make their proper WWF return, kicking off what would become nearly an 8-year run for Martel and the company. While Rick couldn't have known it at the time, he was about to embark on the most memorable chapter of his career, one that would see him transform from beloved fan favorite to one of the most despised villains in wrestling. But that transformation was still to come, and for now, the model of technical excellence known as Rick Martel was just getting started on his most significant WWF run. the Can-Am Connection quickly proved they were more than just another pretty boy tag team. While their good looks might have caught the eye of female fans, it was their fast-paced, technically sound ring work that made everyone sit up and take notice. The WWF knew they had something special on their hands, choosing Martel and Zenk to open WrestleMania XI, arguably the biggest show in wrestling history up to that point. That night, they didn't disappoint, defeating the veteran duo of Magnificent Don Muraco and Cowboy Bob Orton in a match that set the tone for the entire historic evening. Following their WrestleMania success, the Can-Am Connection became fixtures on the WWF's grueling house show circuit. Behind the scenes, the team was being groomed for even bigger things. While most fans watching at home never saw it, Martel and Zenk had two separate shots at the Hart Foundation's WWF Tag Team Championships in dark matches, unbroadcast bouts that often served as test runs for future television programs. Looking back at the booking patterns and match history from that period, it seems clear that the WWF had big plans for the Can-Am Connection. Reports would later surface that Vince McMahon saw them as his next top babyface tag team, following in the footsteps of other beloved duos like the Rockers and the British Bulldogs. With their combination of good looks, athletic ability, and crowd connection, Martel and Zenk seemed destined for tag team glory. But the wrestling business can be as cruel as it is unpredictable. Just as the Can-Am Connection was building momentum, everything fell apart over the eternal wrestling issue: money. Yes, Tom Zenk, feeling he wasn't being compensated fairly, became convinced that his partner was making significantly more than him, an allegation that Martel continues to deny to this day. The dispute proved impossible to resolve, and Zenk made the decision to leave the WWF. After the split, Zenk would forge his own path in the business, heading back to Japan before having a run in the AWA. Eventually, he would resurface in World Championship Wrestling under the name Z-Man, though he never quite reached the heights that seemed possible during those early Can-Am Connection days. What might have been one of wrestling's great tag team success stories instead became another cautionary tale about how quickly things can fall apart in the unpredictable world of professional wrestling. In the wake of the Can-Am Connection's dissolution, the WWF didn't let Rick Martel stay without a partner for long. When the powerful Islanders began targeting Martel in singles matches, it was Tito Santana who stepped up to even the odds. Yes, the formation of Strikeforce wasn't just about creating a new team. It was about building something even better than what came before. The similarities between Strikeforce and the Can-Am Connection were impossible to miss. From keeping the same entrance theme to maintaining that crowd-pleasing style of fast-paced technical wrestling, Strikeforce felt like a natural evolution of what Martel had started with Zenk. While some tag teams struggled to find their chemistry, Martel and Santana clicked almost immediately, their similar wrestling backgrounds making them a perfect fit. But Strikeforce would accomplish something that had eluded the Can-Am Connection, capturing tag team gold. During an episode of WWF Superstars, Martel and Santana shocked the wrestling world by defeating the Hart Foundation for the WWF Tag Team Championships. The victory proved that Strikeforce wasn't just a replacement team. They were legitimate contenders in their own right. Their reign at the top wouldn't last as long as they hoped, though. At WrestleMania IV, the powerful duo of Demolition proved too much for Strikeforce, with Axe and Smash walking away with the tag team titles. While losing the belts was a blow, what happened next would have an even bigger impact on both Martel's career and personal life. Behind the scenes, Martel was dealing with something far more important than championship gold. His wife had fallen ill and needed care. The WWF, showing a compassionate side that wasn't always visible in the wrestling business, gave Rick 6 months off to be with his family. What no one could have predicted was how different things would be when he finally returned to the ring. The return of Rick Martel to the WWF in early 1989 seemed like a fresh start for Strikeforce. After 6 months away caring for his wife, Martel was back beside his partner Tito Santana, and the duo found themselves booked in a high-profile match against the Brainbusters at WrestleMania V. While fans expected to see the same synchronized teamwork that had made Strikeforce champions, what they got instead was one of wrestling's most overlooked betrayals. In a moment that would change both men's careers forever, Santana's flying forearm accidentally caught his own partner. But instead of shaking it off like so many teammates had done before, something snapped in Rick Martel. The frustration that had been building during his time away from the ring finally boiled over, and in a shocking moment, Martel simply walked away from the match, leaving his partner to fend for himself against Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. The aftermath proved even more dramatic than the betrayal itself. In a scathing interview segment, Martel tore into his former partner, claiming that Santana had been nothing more than a passenger riding on Rick Martel's coattails. While wrestling history often celebrates the dramatic heel turns of stars like Bret Hart at WrestleMania XIII, Triple H at WrestleMania XV, or Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania XVII, the dissolution of Strikeforce remains one of the most underappreciated character turns in WrestleMania history. The betrayal marked more than just the end of a successful tag team. It represented a complete transformation for Rick Martel. Gone was the clean-cut technical wrestler who'd won championships around the world. In his place stood a man ready to show a darker, more narcissistic side of his personality. By late 1989, Rick Martel wasn't just a heel. He was transforming into something wrestling had never seen before. While many wrestlers turned bad by becoming more aggressive or violent, Martel went in an entirely different direction, reinventing himself as the Model. This wasn't just a nickname. It was a complete character overhaul that would prove to be the most memorable role of his career. The genius of the Model gimmick was in its details. From his perfectly coiffed hair to his runway strut to the ring, Martel embraced every aspect of his new narcissistic persona. But perhaps his masterstroke was the introduction of arrogance, his signature fragrance that doubled as a weapon against his opponents. Yes, while other wrestlers relied on foreign objects or brass knuckles, the Model had weaponized vanity itself, blinding his opponents with sprays of his exclusive cologne. What made the character work so brilliantly was how naturally it seemed to fit Martel. His French-Canadian accent, once a potential barrier in American wrestling, now became an asset, adding an extra layer of sophistication to his conceited persona. Every mannerism, every gesture, every word that came out of his mouth seemed perfectly calculated to make fans despise him. The effectiveness of this character transformation was on full display at the 1989 Survivor Series, where Martel got to eliminate his former partner Tito Santana in their elimination match. The victory served as an exclamation point on their feud, proving that the Model wasn't just a pretty face. He was a legitimate threat in the ring. While Martel had always been respected for his technical ability, it was this combination of in-ring skill and character work that truly set him apart. Looking back now, it's clear that the Model wasn't just another wrestling gimmick. It was Rick Martel finally finding his true calling in the business. While he'd succeeded as a babyface both in singles and tag team competition, it was as this self-absorbed heel that he truly got to showcase his full range of talents. The Model continued to rise as he stepped into WrestleMania XI, making short work of Coco Beware. But it was his next feud that would give wrestling fans some of the most memorable moments of 1990. When Rick Martel sprayed his arrogance cologne into the eyes of Jake the Snake Roberts, he kicked off a rivalry that would define both men's years. The bad blood between Martel and Roberts reached its first peak at the 1990 Survivor Series. Leading his team of fellow heels, Power and Glory and the Warlord, Martel's Visionaries accomplished something rare in Survivor Series history: a clean sweep victory over Roberts' Vipers team, which included Jimmy Snuka and the High Flying Rockers. While clean sweeps were uncommon in these matches, the Model and his team made it look easy. That night wasn't over for Martel, though. Following the tradition of the time, all surviving wrestlers from the night's matches would meet in one final showdown. The Visionaries found themselves standing across the ring from an all-star team of fan favorites, including Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, and ironically, Martel's former partner Tito Santana. Even though the Model had survived his earlier match unscathed, the combined power of Hogan and Warrior proved too much, leading to his elimination in a moment that had fans cheering. The Roberts-Martel rivalry wouldn't end there, though. At the 1991 Royal Rumble, Martel managed to eliminate his nemesis, but perhaps more impressively, he set a new record by lasting 53 minutes in the match. The feud needed a definitive ending, though, and at WrestleMania XI, the two were booked in one of wrestling's most unique stipulation matches, a blindfold match. Though the blindfold match might have seemed like an innovative way to settle their feud at the time, particularly given the storyline of Martel blinding Roberts, looking back now it's hard to recommend. The match, which saw Roberts emerge victorious, proved that some creative concepts work better on paper than in practice. After closing the chapter on his feud with Jake Roberts, Rick Martel found himself with a unique opportunity. The WWF's partnership with Super World of Sports in Japan meant the model would be taking his arrogant persona overseas. When Martel returned to WWF television, he arrived just in time for what many consider one of the greatest Royal Rumble matches ever produced, the 1992 edition. The WWF Championship itself was on the line, and the ring was filled with a who's who of wrestling legends. From the Macho Man Randy Savage to Hulk Hogan, from the rising star Shawn Michaels to the legendary Rowdy Roddy Piper, from The Undertaker to the Million Dollar Man. This wasn't just another battle royal, it was a showcase of arguably the most talented roster in WWF history. The night would belong to the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who entered at number 3 and lasted over an hour to capture the WWF Championship. But even in this star-studded field, the model managed to make his presence felt. While he might not have won the match, Martel's participation in this historic Royal Rumble helped cement his place among the elite performers of that era. The early months of 1992 saw the model continuing to work with the WWF's rising stars. At WrestleMania XI, he found himself on the losing end of an encounter with the undefeated Tatanka, helping to build the Native American star's impressive winning streak. While some wrestlers might have resented being used to elevate new talent, Martel's professionalism meant he could make anyone look good in the ring. Following WrestleMania, Martel's schedule took him across the Atlantic for a European tour, where he worked a series of matches with the Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich. Back in the United States, he found himself renewing his old rivalry with Tito Santana, though his former partner had undergone his own transformation, now competing as the bullfighting El Matador. While their feud had cooled over the years, the chemistry between these former teammates remained as strong as ever. But it was the summer of 1992 that would give Rick Martel one of the most memorable matches of his career. The model found himself in a unique feud with fellow narcissist Shawn Michaels, as both men competed for the affections of sensational Sherry. While most wrestling rivalries centered around championships or personal vendettas, this one was all about ego. Two of wrestling's most conceited personalities fighting over who was truly the most gorgeous man in the WWF. Their clash at SummerSlam 1992 came with one of the most unusual stipulations in wrestling history. Neither man was allowed to punch the other in the face. The rule made perfect sense for the characters, as both the model and the Heartbreak Kid were obsessed with protecting their moneymakers. Though some might have seen this as a limitation, these two skilled wrestlers turned it into an advantage, creating a unique match that stood out from everything else on the card. This match between Martel and Michaels perfectly captured what made both characters work so well. Two men so vain, so obsessed with their looks, that they literally wrote no face punching into their match contract. While fans might have found the stipulation silly, it actually represented something rare for that era: two heel wrestlers facing each other on a major pay-per-view. The match would end in a double countout, with sensational Sherry ultimately choosing to stay in the corner of the Heartbreak Kid. Following this high-profile program, Martel found himself back in familiar territory with Tatanka. But this time, the model had crossed a cultural line by stealing Tatanka's sacred eagle feathers and treating them as nothing more than a fashion accessory. The feud would come to an end at the 1992 Survivor Series, where Tatanka finally reclaimed his feathers and his dignity with a victory over the model. Then came one of wrestling's great mysteries: the model's gradual fade from prominence. Despite having one of the most well-developed characters in the company and consistently strong in-ring performances, Rick Martel was left off the WrestleMania XI card entirely. While wrestlers like the model should have been flourishing in the increasingly character-driven WWF of the early 90s, for some reason the company seemed to lose interest in pushing him. By 1993, Martel's television appearances had become increasingly rare. When he did appear, it was usually to help elevate newer stars like the 1-2-3 Kid or Razor Ramon on the house show circuit. While the model remained as polished as ever between the ropes, the WWF seemed content to let one of their most reliable performers languish in the lower mid-card. For many fans and wrestling historians, this remains one of the more puzzling booking decisions of the era. A proven performer with a great character seemingly relegated to the sidelines for no clear reason. September 1993 offered a brief glimmer of hope for the model's career when he found himself in contention for the vacant Intercontinental Championship. After both he and Razor Ramon advanced through qualifying matches, the two met on Monday Night Raw with the prestigious title on the line. Though Martel would ultimately come up short against the bad guy, the match served as a reminder of just how good he could be when given the opportunity. But any momentum from that title shot quickly faded as Martel found himself sliding back down the card. He made appearances in the traditional Survivor Series match that year and returned to the Royal Rumble in January 1994. But the spotlight seemed increasingly distant. Though the model remained as skilled as ever, the WWF appeared to have other plans for their television time. Perhaps the biggest missed opportunity came at WrestleMania X. Martel was scheduled to be part of the 10-man tag team match at Madison Square Garden, but time constraints forced the bout off the card. While the match would take place the following night on Raw, with Martel's team emerging victorious, it wasn't quite the same as having that WrestleMania moment. Yes, a victory at the Garden during wrestling's biggest show of the year might have helped revitalize the model's career, but it simply wasn't in the cards. Rick Martel's WWF run would come to a quiet end in 1994. His final Raw appearance saw him job to Lex Luger, and his last matches on the house show circuit found him putting over a variety of opponents, including Adam Bomb, Macho Man Randy Savage, and even Duke the Dumpster Droz. After departing the WWF in July 1994, Rick Martel began focusing on what would become his second career, real estate. While many wrestlers struggled to find their footing outside the ring, Martel was already planning for his future. He did make one final WWF appearance, though, showing up as a surprise entrant in the 1995 Royal Rumble match, giving fans one last glimpse of the model. During this period, Martel wasn't completely done with wrestling. He continued to work occasional shows back home in Quebec, keeping his skills sharp even as he built his business career. While many assumed the model had hung up his boots for good, he was really just waiting for the right opportunity to return to the big stage. That opportunity came in 1998, when Rick Martel shocked the wrestling world by appearing in World Championship Wrestling. What surprised fans even more than his arrival was his physical condition. At an age when many wrestlers were showing clear signs of wear and tear, Martel looked like he hadn't aged a day since his WWF run. While some fans might have rolled their eyes at WCW signing yet another former WWF star, those who remembered Martel's technical excellence were excited to see what he could still do in the ring. The good news was that Martel could definitely still go, proving that his time away from the spotlight hadn't diminished his in-ring abilities. The bad news? The model gimmick that had made him such a memorable character in the WWF was nowhere to be found. Even though Rick Martel was still as smooth as ever between the ropes, fans couldn't help but miss the narcissistic personality that had made him such a compelling villain in the early 90s. In an ironic twist of fate, just as Rick Martel seemed poised for one last great run in wrestling, his body had other plans. On February 16, 1998, he captured the WCW Television Championship from Booker T on Monday Nitro, proving he could still compete at the highest level. While many might have seen him as just another WWF castoff, Martel showed he still had what it took to be a champion. But wrestling can be cruel, and just 1 week later at Super Brawl, disaster struck. During his match with Booker T, a bad landing on the ring ropes resulted in a torn inside ligament in Martel's right knee. As if that wasn't bad enough, he also suffered a fractured leg in the same match. Even though Martel had been scheduled to retain his title that night, the injuries forced an impromptu change of plans, with the belt returning to Booker T. Never one to give up easily, Martel attempted a comeback on the July 13, 1998 episode of Nitro, facing off against Stevie Ray. But in a cruel twist that seemed almost impossible to believe, he suffered yet another injury during the match. Yes, just when it looked like the model might have one more run left in him, his body was sending clear signals that maybe it was time to focus on that real estate career after all. the timing of these injuries was particularly bitter. Martel had shown he could still wrestle at a high level, and his TV title victory proved WCW had faith in his abilities. But sometimes the hardest part of wrestling isn't the competition. It's knowing when to walk away. Rick Martel's WCW run might have been brief, but it served as both a reminder of his incredible talent and a fitting end to his Major League Wrestling career. In a fitting end to his remarkable career, Rick Martel chose to have his final match far from the bright lights of WCW or WWF. Yes, while many wrestlers opt for high-profile retirement matches in major promotions, Martel's last bout took place in Hawaii at an IWF event, where he faced off against the Metal Maniac. The decision to retire in Hawaii, away from the mainstream wrestling spotlight, seemed perfectly in character for Martel. Throughout his career, he had always shown a willingness to wrestle anywhere in the world, from Japanese dojos to Puerto Rican arenas to small Hawaiian venues. While some might have expected the model to demand a grander stage for his final bow, Rick Martel chose to end things on his own terms. Fittingly, Martel's final match ended in victory, as he defeated the Metal Maniac one last time. It was a quiet but dignified end to a career that had spanned multiple decades. Despite Martel's impressive career achievements, his absence from WWE's Hall of Fame remains one of wrestling's more puzzling omissions. The roots of this situation can perhaps be traced back decades, revealing a series of conflicts that would shape his relationship with the company for years to come. The first potential issue emerged during his initial WWE contract negotiations in 1984. Unlike many other wrestlers of his era, Martel refused to sign away his rights to work in Japan. For a wrestler of his caliber, Japanese bookings were incredibly lucrative, sometimes paying more for a single tour than months of WWE appearances. Recently uncovered documents show that WWE executives were stunned by his refusal to sign their standard contract. While they eventually compromised, sources close to the situation claim this marked Martel as difficult in the eyes of management. His run as the model provided the second potential issue. While the character was popular with fans, it wasn't the direction WWE originally planned for him. Former WWE writer Bruce Pritchard revealed in a podcast that Martel was originally slated for a main event push in 1989. However, his continued insistence on maintaining his Japanese booking dates led to the company repositioning him as a mid-card character instead. The model gimmick, while successful, effectively ended his chances at a world championship run. The third potential issue came during the steroid controversy of the early 1990s. Unlike many wrestlers who stayed quiet, Martel was vocal about the pressure performers faced to maintain certain physiques. While he never directly accused WWE of any wrongdoing, his comments in several French-Canadian newspapers raised eyebrows within the company. The fourth, and perhaps most telling potential issue, emerged after his retirement. While many stars of his era regularly appeared on WWE programming for Legends Nights, documentaries, and Hall of Fame ceremonies, Martel was notably absent from these events. Between 2000 and 2023, he made just 2 brief appearances on WWE programming, far fewer than contemporaries like Jake Roberts or Greg Valentine. Industry insiders note that even when WWE produced content about his era, or the territories where he was champion, Martel was often overlooked or excluded entirely. This pattern of limited post-career appearances has led many to speculate about ongoing tension between Martel and WWE management, potentially contributing to his omission from the Hall of Fame despite his significant achievements. Compounding these issues was Martel's decision to jump to WCW in 1997. While many wrestlers made similar moves, Martel's departure came at a particularly sensitive time for WWE. He had been negotiating a return to a more prominent role, potentially as a trainer for the company's developmental system. When he opted for WCW instead, it was seen as a personal slight by key decision-makers. Recent social media campaigns by fans and fellow wrestlers have called for Martel's induction. WWE Hall of Famers Bret Hart and Tito Santana have publicly supported his candidacy. Even wrestling historians point to his technical innovation and international drawing power as more than sufficient qualifications for inclusion. Yet each year, when the Hall of Fame class is announced, Martel's name remains conspicuously absent. Industry insiders suggest that time might finally be healing these old wounds. With WWE's recent leadership changes and increased focus on wrestling history, there's growing speculation that Martel could finally receive his due recognition. However, until that happens, his absence from the Hall of Fame stands as a stark reminder of wrestling's unforgiving political landscape, where talent and achievement don't always guarantee the recognition they deserve. If you're hungry for more wrestling history, check out The Squared Circle, a book packed with fascinating insights about the sport we love. Link in the description. And don't miss our documentary on Mr. Perfect and how he lost his world title push. Rick Martel's story extends beyond championship gold and arrogant poses, living on in the matches that still captivate viewers decades later. Though the Hall of Fame spot remains elusive, his impact on professional wrestling speaks volumes. Next up, King Kong Bundy. At over 450 pounds, King Kong Bundy moved like a man half his size. At his peak, this monster demanded referees count to 5, because 3 seconds wasn't enough to prove his total dominance. But in 2019, the walking condominium would face his final opponent, and this time, not even a 5 count could save him. In 1955, Chris Allen Pallies was born in Woodbury, New Jersey. Growing up, Chris was always bigger than most kids his age, but he wasn't just big. He was a natural athlete who dominated in amateur wrestling, winning 2 regional championships before graduating in 1974. After high school, Chris headed to Larry Sharp's Monster Factory Wrestling School in Belmar, New Jersey, the place where giants were made. On March 7, 1981, he debuted in the World Wrestling Federation as Chris Kanyon, scoring his first victory against Strong Kobayashi 4 months later. But it was in Texas, with world-class championship wrestling, where Chris Pallies would transform into the legendary King Kong Bundy. Chris Pallies started out as Big Daddy Bundy, but that name was just the beginning. Everything changed when he got into a nasty feud with Texas wrestling's royal family, the Von Erichs. That's when he joined forces with the smooth-talking manager Gary Hart, who saw something special in the big man. Hart knew exactly what to do. He rebranded his massive wrestler as King Kong Bundy. Just like the famous movie monster, Bundy was huge, intimidating, and impossible to ignore. But sometimes the best things in wrestling happen by accident. During his heated battles with the Von Erichs, Bundy lost his hair in a match. Instead of being a setback, this became his trademark look. That massive, bald head made him stand out from every other wrestler. You couldn't miss King Kong Bundy when he walked into an arena. After making his mark in Texas, Bundy hit the road to become an even better wrestler. He traveled across the country, wrestling in different territories and learning new tricks along the way. In the American Wrestling Association, he terrorized their biggest stars. But his biggest achievement during this time came in Georgia Championship Wrestling. There, he teamed up with a mysterious masked wrestler known as the Superstar, and together they did something incredible. They beat the unstoppable Road Warriors for the NWA National Tag Team Championship. The Road Warriors were considered nearly unbeatable, so this was a huge deal. But it was in Mid-South Wrestling where Bundy came up with something that would make him truly unique. He wasn't satisfied with the regular 3-count pin that every other wrestler used. No, King Kong Bundy demanded the referee count to 5. This wasn't just showing off, it was brilliant psychology. Every time he pinned someone for a 5 count, it sent a clear message to everyone watching. I'm not just beating these guys, I'm destroying them. This 5 count became his calling card, something fans would anticipate every time he stepped into the ring. When King Kong Bundy stormed into the WWF on March 16, 1985, everyone knew something huge was about to happen. The WWF had been running promos for weeks, telling fans that a monster was coming. When Bundy finally stepped through the curtain on Championship Wrestling, jaws dropped. Poor Mario Mancini was in the ring, probably wishing he had called in sick that day. What happened next wasn't just a match. It was a demolition that had fans on the edge of their seats. The loud-mouthed manager Jimmy Hart was grinning from ear to ear, knowing he had just unleashed wrestling's newest nightmare on the WWF. But it was at the very first WrestleMania, in the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, where Bundy really made history. His opponent that night was Special Delivery Jones, a tough veteran who'd been in countless battles. But nobody was ready for what happened next. The bell rang, and before the hot dogs in the concession stand could get cold, it was all over. 9 seconds. That's all it took. Bundy crushed SD Jones in the corner with his brutal avalanche splash, followed by his bone-crushing big splash in the middle of the ring. The referee couldn't count fast enough, even with Bundy demanding his trademark 5 count. Wrestling fans had seen quick matches before, but this was different. This was a statement that echoed through the wrestling world. King Kong Bundy wasn't just big, he was unstoppable. All through the summer of 1985, Bundy left a trail of broken opponents across the country. But everything changed in September when Jimmy Hart made a deal that would shake up the wrestling world. He traded Bundy to the greatest manager in wrestling, Bobby "The Brain" Heenan. The Brain knew exactly what to do with his new monster. He aimed Bundy right at the biggest target possible, the legendary Andre the Giant. Now, challenging Andre wasn't something wrestlers did lightly. The 7'4" Giant had been undefeated for 15 years. But Bundy didn't just challenge Andre. He ambushed him during a match and did the unthinkable. He trapped Andre in the corner and delivered splash after devastating splash until Andre's sternum actually cracked under the impact. The message was crystal clear. King Kong Bundy wasn't afraid of giants. He broke them. This wasn't just another wrestling angle. This was the moment Bundy proved he could destroy anyone, no matter how big or legendary they were. The attack on Andre the Giant wasn't just a one-time thing. It kicked off some of the most exciting matches of 1985. Wrestling fans couldn't wait to see these giants clash. It all started heating up on Saturday night's main event, which was a huge deal because wrestling was rarely on network TV back then. On October 3rd, 1985, everyone tuned in to see an explosive tag team match. In one corner, you had King Kong Bundy teaming up with another giant, Big John Studd. In the other corner stood Andre the Giant, still nursing his injured sternum, alongside the powerhouse Tony Atlas. The building was electric that night. You could feel the tension in the air. But that was just the warm-up. The WWF raised the stakes even higher in the second match when Andre brought in the biggest star in wrestling, the WWF champion himself, Hulk Hogan. Just imagine this scene. Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan, probably the two most famous wrestlers in the world, standing together in one corner, while Bundy and Studd, two massive monsters, waited in the other. These matches showed everyone a different side of Bundy. Sure, he was devastating in single matches, but now he was proving he could be just as dominant in tag team action. He wasn't just a solo destroyer. He was a smart wrestler who could work with a partner to take down even the biggest stars in the business. Everything came to a head on September 23, 1985, at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. They called it the Colossal Jostle, and that name wasn't just hype. Picture this: Andre the Giant, all 7'4", and nearly 500 pounds of him, finally getting his hands on Bundy one-on-one. The garden was packed to the rafters. Even though Bundy didn't win the match, something more important happened that night. He proved he belonged in the ring with the legendary Andre the Giant. Remember, very few wrestlers could even stand up to Andre, let alone give him a real fight. But Bundy didn't just stand up to him. He made Andre work harder than he had in years. After that night, nobody could say Bundy was just another big guy. He had earned his place among wrestling's elite monsters. After proving he could hang with Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy had his eyes on an even bigger prize, the WWF Championship around Hulk Hogan's waist. But Bundy didn't just politely challenge Hogan to a match. No, he made a statement that shocked the wrestling world on Saturday night's main event. Together with his massive partner, the Magnificent Morocco, Bundy launched a surprise attack on Hogan that left fans gasping. This wasn't your typical wrestling beatdown. They hit Hogan so hard they actually cracked his ribs. Every time Hogan took a breath in the following weeks, you could see the pain on his face. This wasn't just wrestling storyline stuff. Those bruises were real, and everyone knew it. This brutal attack set the stage for something huge: the main event of WrestleMania II on April 7, 1986. But Hogan and Bundy weren't just going to have a regular match. No, they were going to be locked inside a steel cage. The build-up to this match was intense. Every time Bundy appeared on TV, he'd remind everyone how he'd injured Hogan's ribs, promising to finish the job inside the cage. Meanwhile, Hogan was selling those injured ribs, making fans wonder if their hero could possibly survive being trapped in a cage with this monster. When WrestleMania II finally arrived, the atmosphere was electric. Just imagine this scene. The massive steel cage lowering around the ring, Bundy's intimidating figure filling one corner, and Hogan, still favoring those injured ribs, pacing in the other. What followed was something wrestling fans still talk about today. Bundy used every inch of that cage, throwing Hogan into the steel, squashing him in corners, and coming incredibly close to winning the title several times. The fans were on their feet, holding their breath with every near fall. Could this be the night Hulkamania died? But just when it looked like Bundy might actually pull it off, Hogan found that supernatural strength he was famous for. Fighting through the pain of his injured ribs, he managed to hit his legendary leg drop, the move that had finished off countless opponents before. Even though Bundy didn't win the title that night, he did something just as important. He helped make WrestleMania feel like the biggest event in wrestling. This wasn't just another match. It was a war between giants that proved WrestleMania was truly wrestling's Super Bowl. After the huge cage match with Hogan, Bundy wasn't done making waves. He teamed back up with his old partner Big John Studd, and together they stumbled into one of the strangest and most fascinating feuds in wrestling history, the mystery of the Machines. Here's where things get really interesting. A group of massive wrestlers started showing up in masks, calling themselves the Machines. The leader was Giant Machine, and something about him seemed really familiar. Bobby the Brain. Heenan started putting the pieces together. He was convinced that Giant Machine was actually Andre the Giant in disguise. See, Andre had been suspended at the time, and Heenan believed this was his clever way of sneaking back into the WWF. Bundy and Studd became like wrestling detectives, trying to prove it was Andre under that mask. Every week, they'd try new ways to expose Giant Machine, measuring his footprints, comparing his moves to Andre's, even trying to rip the mask off during matches. This wasn't just about wrestling anymore. It was like a mystery show mixed with athletics. Fans packed arenas to see these wild six-man tag matches where Bundy, Studd, and Heenan would face different combinations of the Machines and their partners. The matches were full of drama and comedy, with Heenan constantly pointing out evidence that Giant Machine was Andre, while Bundy and Studd tried to unmask their mysterious opponents. But that's not all Bundy was up to during this time. He and Studd set their sights on the WWF Tag Team Champions, the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, and the Dynamite Kid. Now, this was really interesting because it showed a whole different side of Bundy. The Bulldogs were way smaller but incredibly quick and hard-hitting. Everyone wondered how a monster like Bundy would handle these speedy opponents. But he proved he could do more than just squash people. He adapted his style, showing he could keep up with the Bulldogs' faster pace. Sure, they never won the tag team titles, but these matches proved Bundy wasn't just a one-trick giant. He could work with anybody, big or small, and make the matches exciting. WrestleMania III showed fans a side of King Kong Bundy they never expected to see. Instead of battling giants, he found himself in one of the most unusual matches ever, a mixed six-person tag team match involving Little People wrestlers. Bundy teamed up with Little Tokyo and Lord Littlebrook against an odd team of Hillbilly Jim and his partners, the Hang Away. Finally, Bundy had enough. In a moment that made the massive crowd gasp, he grabbed Little Beaver, hoisted him up, and slammed him to the mat. Then came the crushing elbow drop, a move that looked absolutely devastating given the size difference. The referee and partners turned on him. This wasn't just another match. It showed that Bundy could tell a story in the ring and get fans emotionally invested. But 1987 wasn't done with King Kong Bundy yet. He entered the prestigious King of the Ring tournament, proving he had the stamina to wrestle multiple tough matches in a single night. This was a big deal because most giants couldn't last through several matches like that. Bundy powered his way to the finals, where he faced the flashy and technical Macho Man Randy Savage. Though Savage eventually won, Bundy showed everyone he could hang with the most skilled wrestlers in the business. Then came one of the biggest moments of late 1987. Bundy actually beat Hulk Hogan. Sure, it was by countout on Saturday night's Main Event 13, but beating Hogan in any way was a huge deal back then. Remember, this is when Hulkamania was at its peak. Even though Hogan got his revenge in the rematch on the next show, that victory proved Bundy was still one of the most dangerous men in wrestling. Anytime he stepped in the ring, fans knew there was a real chance they might see Hulkamania come crashing down. After dominating the WWF for years, Bundy surprised everyone by leaving in early 1988. He mostly stayed away from the big spotlight, showing up here and there in smaller wrestling shows. But you can't keep a monster down forever. In late 1994, wrestling fans' jaws dropped when King Kong Bundy made his return to the WWF. This time, he was part of Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Corporation, a group of wrestlers backed by the $1 Million Man's money. It was like seeing a legend come back to life. His comeback match couldn't have gone better. At the 1994 Survivor Series, Bundy teamed up with another monster, Bam Bigelow. Together, they did something incredible. They were the only survivors in their elimination match against Lex Luger's team of American heroes. For a moment, it felt like the unstoppable Bundy of old was back. But wrestling had changed while Bundy was away. The 1995 Royal Rumble showed just how much. Everyone expected the returning giant to dominate the match. After all, how do you throw someone that big over the top rope? But then something shocking happened. Mabel, another massive wrestler who was on the rise, eliminated Bundy after just 3 minutes. The crowd couldn't believe it. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go for a legend like Bundy. His final WrestleMania moment came at WrestleMania XI, where he faced one of the most intimidating wrestlers ever, The Undertaker. Now, this wasn't quite the same as his legendary cage match with Hogan or his quick victory over SD Jones. But even though Bundy was older now, you could still see flashes of what made him so scary in the first place. When he trapped The Undertaker in the corner for his famous avalanche splash, longtime fans got goosebumps, remembering the monster who had terrorized the WWF in the 1980s. While he didn't win the match, he showed that even in the twilight of his career, King Kong Bundy could still make fans hold their breath whenever he stepped in the ring. After hanging up his wrestling boots, Chris Pallies had to deal with something much tougher than any opponent he'd faced in the ring: the long-term effects of his wrestling career. Like many wrestlers who gave their bodies to entertain fans night after night, Pallies was worried about brain injuries that could affect the rest of his life. He wasn't alone in this fight. Along with other wrestlers, he joined a big lawsuit against WWE, claiming the company hadn't done enough to protect wrestlers from serious head injuries. The lawsuit brought up some heavy issues. It said WWE knew about the dangers of repeated head impacts, but didn't do enough to protect their wrestlers. According to the legal papers, the company didn't just fail to provide proper medical care, they actually tried to hide how serious these injuries could be. This wasn't just about money. It was about wrestling's dark side and the price athletes pay for entertaining fans. Things got complicated when the lawsuit was thrown out by the courts in September 2018. But the effects of this legal battle went beyond the courtroom. Wrestling journalist Anthony Mango from Bleacher Report pointed out something interesting. He believed this lawsuit might be why Pallies never made it into the WWE Hall of Fame. Despite being one of the most memorable big men in wrestling history and helping make WrestleMania the huge event it is today, King Kong Bundy's name was never called for the Hall of Fame. King Kong Bundy wasn't just a monster in the ring. He had a whole other life in the entertainment world. Here's something cool that not everyone knows. The main family in the hit TV show Married with Children wasn't named Bundy by accident. The show's creators were such big wrestling fans that they named the family after King Kong Bundy himself. He even showed up on the show several times, and fans went crazy every time he appeared. But that wasn't his only brush with Hollywood. In the movie Moving, he got to work with comedy legend Richard Pryor. Picture this: the massive King Kong Bundy playing a clumsy mover. It was like seeing your favorite wrestling monster in a whole new light. Then there was Weird Science, where he got to play a wrestling coach. Talk about perfect casting. Who better to teach TV characters about wrestling than a real-life wrestling legend? Later in life, Bundy surprised everyone by stepping onto comedy club stages. That's right. The same guy who demanded 5 counts and crushed opponents in steel cages was now making people laugh on purpose. He traded body slams for punchlines, proving he had a quick wit to match his impressive size. But on March 4, 2019, the wrestling world lost a true giant. Chris Pallies, known to millions as King Kong Bundy, passed away at his home in Glassboro, New Jersey. He was just 63 years old, taken too soon by complications from diabetes. The same town where his incredible journey began now said goodbye to one of wrestling's most unforgettable characters. When we look back at King Kong Bundy's amazing career, we see so much more than just another big guy in wrestling. Before him, most giant wrestlers would just lumber around the ring, using their size and nothing else. Bundy changed all that. Here was a huge man who could move like someone half his size, who could tell stories in the ring, who could make you laugh on TV one day and terrify you in a steel cage the next. Bundy's biggest gift to wrestling was showing future big men what was possible. He showed up in main events at the first 2 WrestleManias, helping make those shows the huge deal they are today. He broke Andre the Giant's sternum, went toe-to-toe with Hulk Hogan in a steel cage, and even made people take little people matches seriously at WrestleMania III. He could work with anybody, any style, any size, and make it look good. After him, you had to have personality. You had to be able to work with different kinds of opponents. Whenever you see a modern giant wrestler moving quickly or cutting a funny promo, you're seeing a little bit of Bundy's influence. Today's wrestling fans might see clips of King Kong Bundy and think of him as a star from wrestling's past. But for those who saw him in his prime, who felt the arena shake when he hit that corner splash, who counted along as referees got to 5, we know we were watching something special. The walking condominium may be gone, but the blueprint he created for future wrestling giants will stand forever. Rest in peace, King Kong Bundy. And thank you for making us count to 5. Next up, Bam Bigelow. Bam Bigelow was the massive monster who shocked the world by pulling off moves that only cruiserweights were supposed to do. He went from wrestling NFL legend Lawrence Taylor to becoming a real-life hero who suffered severe burns while rescuing 3 children from a fire. But 17 years after his death, Bigelow still isn't in the Hall of Fame. On September 1, 1961, Scott Bigelow was born in the coastal town of Asbury Park, New Jersey. Even as a child, everyone could see there was something different about Scott. He was much bigger than other kids his age, and he had natural athletic talents that made him stand out wherever he went. In high school, Bigelow's athletic talents really began to shine. Although he wouldn't end up finishing school, he achieved something remarkable, earning varsity letters in both football and wrestling during just his sophomore year. His wrestling skills were particularly outstanding, and in 1979, he fought his way to 3rd place in the New Jersey State Wrestling Tournament. But his promising athletic career hit a roadblock when doctors discovered a cyst in his lower back. This painful condition forced him to sit out his entire senior wrestling season. As Bigelow entered his late teenage years, he started exploring different ways to show off his natural strength. He became a regular face at arm wrestling tournaments, where his powerful build made him a formidable opponent. However, this period of his life also took some dark turns. His teenage years were marked by numerous run-ins with the law, ranging from relatively minor incidents to serious offenses. The list of charges was lengthy: aggravated assault, attempted kidnapping, drug possession, robbery, and sexual assault. These troubles with the law eventually led to serious consequences. As a teenager, Bigelow spent 9 months locked up at the Albert C. Wagner Youth Correctional Facility, a time that would leave a lasting impact on his life path. After leaving high school without graduating, Bigelow tried his hand at several tough jobs that suited his intimidating size. He worked as a bouncer, a bodyguard, and even a bounty hunter. During his bounty hunting days, he told a wild story about chasing a fugitive in Mexico that went terribly wrong. According to Bigelow, the person he was hunting shot him in the back, and Mexican authorities threw him in jail for 6 months in Mexico City. When he got back to the United States, Bigelow took a hard look at his future. With no high school diploma and a rough past, he made a choice that would change his life forever. As he put it plainly, "There wasn't much else I was qualified for, so he decided to become a professional wrestler." It turned out to be the perfect fit for someone with his unique combination of size and athletic ability. In May 1985, Bigelow took his first steps toward his wrestling career by joining Larry Sharp's Monster Factory Wrestling School in Clementon, New Jersey. This famous training ground was known for turning out some of wrestling's biggest stars. Just a few months later, on August 23, 1985, Bigelow had his very first professional match. It happened at the famous Studio 54 nightclub in New York City, at a show run by well-known wrestling promoter Paul Heyman. By the middle of 1986, Bigelow had moved south to Memphis, Tennessee, where he started wrestling for the Continental Wrestling Association. This is where he got his famous nickname, becoming known as Bam Bigelow. The wrestling promoters knew exactly what to do with someone as big and athletic as Bigelow. They turned him into a monster. He would often fight multiple opponents at once in handicap matches, showing off his incredible strength and power. He became known for breaking the rules, especially by climbing to the top rope and jumping off, something that was illegal in wrestling at that time. These dramatic matches helped build his reputation as one of wrestling's most intimidating new stars. Growing quickly in the wrestling world, Bigelow hit a major milestone on July 28, 1986. In a match called a Battle Royal, where many wrestlers fight at the same time until only one is left standing, Bigelow emerged victorious and won his first big title, the Southern Heavyweight Championship. But his time at the top didn't last long. Just a few weeks later, on September 8th, he lost the belt to Jerry Lawler in a brutal type of match called a Texas Death Match, where wrestlers fight until one can't continue. After losing his title, Bigelow disappeared from the Continental Wrestling Association for a while to heal up. But when he came back, something unexpected happened. He joined forces with Jerry Lawler, the very man who had taken his championship. Together, they became a powerful tag team, picking fights with two other wrestlers named Austin Idol and Tommy Rich. The fans loved these intense matches, which often turned into wild brawls. Near the end of 1986, Bigelow tried something completely different. He moved to Texas to work for World Class Championship Wrestling, where he transformed into a totally new character. Playing on Cold War tensions of the time, he became Crusher Yurov, a scary Russian wrestler who struck fear into American audiences. This new role worked well for him. He won another title called the WCWA Television Championship. His success that year caught people's attention, and the readers of a respected wrestling magazine called the Wrestling Observer Newsletter voted him as the best new wrestler of 1986, giving him their Rookie of the Year award. This was quite an achievement, showing how quickly Bigelow had made his mark in professional wrestling. At the start of 1987, Bigelow's wrestling career took an international turn when he began traveling to Japan. Working for New Japan Pro Wrestling, he became known as Crusher Bam Bigelow. Japanese fans loved his unique mix of size and agility, something they hadn't seen much before in their wrestling rings. In May 1987, Bigelow made the big jump to America's largest wrestling company, the World Wrestling Federation. At first, he only wrestled in matches that weren't shown on TV, called dark matches and house shows. These matches helped him learn the WWF style and get comfortable performing for bigger crowds. When he finally appeared on television, the company created an interesting story around him called The Battle for Bam Bam. Four of wrestling's most famous heel managers, Jimmy Hart, Johnny Valiant, Mr. Fuji, and Bobby Heenan, all fought over who would get to be Bigelow's manager. Everyone wondered who Bigelow would choose. In September 1987, he surprised everyone by picking Oliver Humperdinck, which made him one of the good guys in wrestling. Bigelow quickly showed why everyone wanted him on their side. In September and October 1987, he won several Battle Royal matches, throwing out multiple wrestlers to claim victory. Then came his first big TV special appearance at a show called Survivor Series. He joined a team of wrestling stars: Don Morocco, the famous Hulk Hogan, Ken Patera, and Paul Orndorff. They faced off against some of wrestling's scariest heels: the massive Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, Butch Reed, One Man Gang, and Rick Rude. Though Bigelow's team lost, he showed he could hang with wrestling's biggest names. By January 1988, Bigelow was regularly wrestling in main event matches. He started a heated rivalry with Ted DiBiase, known as the $1 Million Man. Often, Bigelow would team up with the biggest star in wrestling, Hulk Hogan, to face DiBiase and Andre in exciting matches that had fans packing arenas across the country. In June 1988, Bigelow faced one of the toughest matches of his career against Andre the Giant at Madison Square Garden. The match turned ugly when Andre decided to fight for real instead of following the usual wrestling style. Wrestling star Bret Hart later said Andre had nearly destroyed Bigelow in the ring. After this brutal match, Bigelow didn't stick around. He went straight to the locker room, grabbed his stuff, and left the building without talking to anyone. By July 1988, Bigelow was done with the World Wrestling Federation. His knees were badly hurt from all the wrestling, but that wasn't the only reason he left. Many other wrestlers had grown jealous of how quickly he'd risen to fame. They didn't like that a newcomer was getting so many big matches and opportunities while they'd been waiting for years. In September 1988, Bigelow showed up in a different wrestling company, Jim Crockett Promotions, which was about to change its name to World Championship Wrestling. His manager, Oliver Humperdinck, came with him to the new company. Bigelow quickly jumped into action by starting a fight with one of wrestling's most famous groups, the Four Horsemen. This led to a huge opportunity in November 1988, when he got to wrestle the group's leader, Ric Flair, for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The match happened at the Charlotte Coliseum, though it wasn't shown on TV. Even though Bigelow fought hard, he couldn't beat Flair for the title. In 1990, Bigelow's wrestling career took a different turn. Instead of appearing on major TV shows, he mostly wrestled at smaller local events called house shows. When he did show up on TV, it was usually on less important shows like NWA Power Hour and NWA Main Event. Things got more interesting when Bigelow joined forces with a scary group of wrestlers called the Sullivan Slaughterhouse. The group was led by Kevin Sullivan and included the Wild Cactus Jack. These three made a fearsome team, known for their rough and violent style of wrestling. Their biggest moment as a team came in May 1990 at a big event called Capital Combat. Bigelow, Sullivan, and Cactus Jack teamed up for an important match against two very different opponents, Norman the Lunatic and the powerful Road Warriors. Despite the Sullivan Slaughterhouse's reputation for violence, they couldn't overcome their opponents that night. Norman the Lunatic and the Road Warriors won the match, dealing a big blow to Bigelow and his partners. In 1992, Bigelow's career path led him to Mexico, where he joined a company called the Universal Wrestling Association. His time there was mostly spent in six-man tag team matches, a very popular style of wrestling in Mexico. What made this period interesting was that he often teamed up with Andre the Giant. This was surprising because just 4 years earlier, Andre had beaten him up for real in that rough match at Madison Square Garden. But now they had put their bad blood behind them and worked together as partners. Later that year, in October 1992, Bigelow made his way back to the World Wrestling Federation. The company welcomed him back by letting him win many matches. These wins helped rebuild him as a powerful force in wrestling. The biggest moment of his comeback came in January 1993 at the Royal Rumble. There, he faced off against the Big Boss Man, a former prison guard turned wrestler known for his strength and toughness. Bigelow proved he was back in top form by defeating Big Boss Man in a convincing way. This victory showed everyone that Bam Bigelow was ready to be a major player in the WWF once again. On June 13th at the King of the Ring event, Bigelow showed his fighting spirit. He started strong by beating the tough Jim Duggan in the first round of the tournament. Lucky for him, he got to skip the next round because of a bye. But when he reached the final match, he had to face one of wrestling's greatest technicians, Bret Hart. Even though this was Bigelow's third time in a main event on a big show, he couldn't overcome Hart's skilled wrestling style and lost the match. Over the next year, Bigelow found himself mixed up in many different wrestling stories. One of the biggest moments came when he helped the massive champion Yokozuna keep his World Heavyweight Championship. During Yokozuna's match against the mysterious Undertaker, Bigelow was part of a group of heel wrestlers who jumped in and attacked the Undertaker. Thanks to this interference, Yokozuna managed to stay champion. This showed that Bigelow had fully embraced his role as one of the WWF top monsters. The storyline with Yokozuna proved that WWF trusted Bigelow to play important parts in their biggest stories. Even though he wasn't the champion himself, Being involved in championship matches showed how valuable he had become to the company. Working with major stars like Yokozuna and The Undertaker put Bigelow right in the middle of the company's most important feuds. In a surprising moment on Monday Night Raw, on June 27, 1994, Bigelow ended his partnership with Luna Vachon. The wrestling world didn't have to wait long to find out what would happen next. Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, announced he had bought Bigelow's contract. This meant Bigelow was now part of DiBiase's new group, the $1 Million Corporation. The $1 Million Corporation was a collection of wrestlers under DiBiase's control. This new role changed things for Bigelow, turning him into one of the group's most powerful members. Instead of working alone, he now had powerful friends to help him in his matches. This move turned out to be good for Bigelow. At the big Survivor Series event that year, he led his $1 Million team to victory against a team called Guts and Glory. This win proved that joining DiBiase's group had put Bigelow back on the path to success. Having the rich and influential DiBiase in his corner opened up new opportunities for Bigelow to shine in important matches. The WWF had big plans to make their biggest show of the year, WrestleMania XI, even more special. They reached out to Lawrence Taylor, a famous football player who had been an all-pro linebacker for the New York Giants. When Taylor said yes to wrestling a match, they picked Bigelow to be his opponent. This was huge. Bigelow would get to fight a real sports superstar. The story started at the Royal Rumble event where Taylor was watching the matches from a seat near the ring. That night, Bigelow lost a match to a much smaller wrestler called the 1-2-3 Kid. When Bigelow saw Taylor laughing at his loss, he got very angry. His pride hurt. Bigelow stomped over to where Taylor was sitting. Taylor tried to be nice and offered to shake hands, but Bigelow wasn't having any of it. Instead, he shoved the football star to the ground right in front of everyone. This shocking moment got everyone talking. A professional wrestler had just put his hands on one of football's biggest stars. The WWF knew this would grab headlines and get more people interested in seeing what would happen next. By having Bigelow attack Taylor, they had created the perfect reason for these two powerful athletes to face each other at WrestleMania. After shoving Taylor, Bigelow faced quick punishment on the next Monday Night Raw when he got suspended. But even when Vince McMahon tried to get him to say sorry in an interview, Bigelow stood his ground. Instead of apologizing, he challenged Taylor to fight him anytime and anywhere. This showed everyone how serious Bigelow was about proving himself against the football star. Taylor didn't want to fight at first, staying away from wrestling and focusing on his football career. But Bigelow wouldn't leave him alone, throwing insults at him every chance he got. Finally, on February 27, 1995, at a big press conference for WrestleMania XI, Taylor had enough. After listening to more of Bigelow's trash talk, he accepted the challenge to fight. The big match happened on April 2, 1995, in the main event of WrestleMania XI. Even though Bigelow lost to Taylor, the match was a huge success. Major sports media like Sports Illustrated, ESPN SportsCenter, and USA Today all covered the story. This was exactly what WWF wanted. Their wrestling show was getting attention from mainstream sports fans. What made the match really special was how well Bigelow performed. Wrestling insiders praised him for helping Taylor, who had never wrestled before, look good in the ring. Bigelow knew exactly how to work with Taylor's football skills and hide his lack of wrestling experience. This showed that Bigelow wasn't just a great wrestler. He was also smart enough to make an inexperienced opponent look like a real challenger. In late 1995, Bigelow started feeling unhappy with how things were going in the WWF. He didn't like the way Vince McMahon was running things or where the company was heading. His last match happened on November 19, 1995, at the Survivor Series event. That night, he lost to a mysterious new wrestler called Goldust, who had just started appearing in WWF shows. After leaving WWF, Bigelow spent the next decade moving between different wrestling companies. He showed up in World Championship Wrestling and the more hardcore-style ECW. Even though he kept wrestling, his star power wasn't what it used to be. The days of main-eventing WrestleMania and fighting football stars were behind him. Year after year, Bigelow's career slowly went downhill. Despite being one of wrestling's most talented big men who could move like someone half his size, he never again reached the heights he had achieved in WWF. The man who once headlined major shows and grabbed mainstream sports headlines found himself wrestling in smaller venues for less money, showing how quickly fortunes can change in professional wrestling. During this time, a hidden battle was taking over Bigelow's life. He was fighting a serious addiction to OxyContin, a powerful prescription painkiller. Like many wrestlers who dealt with years of injuries, he had started taking pain medication to keep performing. But the medicine that was supposed to help him ended up becoming a major problem. His health got so bad that he couldn't work anymore and had to rely on Social Security disability benefits to survive. His body was breaking down with atherosclerosis, a condition where his arteries got harder and narrower. He also developed diabetes and fought ongoing infections that his body struggled to beat. His back, which had taken countless bumps in the wrestling ring over the years, was in terrible shape. He needed several surgeries to try to fix it, but these operations took their toll. The once towering Bigelow even lost 2 inches of height because of all his back problems. The combination of his addiction and health issues showed how the physical demands of professional wrestling could destroy someone's body and life long after they left the ring. The sad end came on January 19, 2007. Bigelow's girlfriend found him dead in their home in Hudson, Florida. He was only 45 years old. When doctors looked into why he died, they found a deadly mix of drugs in his system: cocaine and benzodiazepines at fatal levels. His heart problems from atherosclerosis also played a part. The medical examiner in Pasco Pinellas County ruled that his death was an accident, not suicide. This tragic ending was perhaps the final chapter in a life marked by both tremendous success and serious struggles. Despite his great talent in the ring, Bigelow's troubled past created problems that followed him throughout his life. His criminal record was serious. The charges included attempted kidnapping, sexual assault, and a particularly concerning incident of reckless driving that put a child in danger. These weren't minor offenses, and they likely made WWE hesitant about celebrating him publicly. Beyond his legal troubles, Bigelow wasn't afraid to speak his mind about wrestling's dark side. He openly talked about 2 subjects wrestling companies usually want to keep quiet: backstage politics and the industry's drug problems. He shared stories about how wrestlers would fight for positions, how some got pushed ahead of others because of politics, and the widespread use of drugs among wrestlers to deal with pain and maintain their schedules. By speaking openly about these sensitive topics, Bigelow might have made himself an uncomfortable choice for the Hall of Fame. For more deep dive stories of the 80s greatest heels, make sure to watch our King Kong Bundy video. Even though Bam Bigelow's life ended too soon, his great matches and fighting spirit will never be forgotten. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Until next time.